Welcome to the Family Builders Podcast. No matter what our family dynamic is, we can all use some help from time to time. Our hope and prayer is that this podcast is a help and a blessing to you each and every week. And now our host, Pastor David Moore, and co-host, Pastor A.J. Harold.
And we're back. Hello, fellow builders. Once again, welcome to this week's episode of the Family Builders Podcast. This is your host, Pastor David Moore from Lakeview Baptist Church in Newcastle, Oklahoma, and back in his rightful place at the helm of the co-host seat, the Reverend Pastor A.J. Harold. Brother Harold, how are you this week?
Hey, I'm doing great. And I just want to say it was pretty awesome listening to the 6 Harold kids fill my one seat. That was a crowded seat right there.
Yeah, boy, I really enjoyed it. I'll be honest, I was kind of nervous. I didn't know what I told him. I said, you can ask me anything. I said it could be about politics. It could be about sports. It could be about current events. It could be about history. It could be about money. It could be about boys and girls. It could be about, whatever, anything. And then I started sweating. I'm like, oh man, what are they going to come up with? But I thought it was enjoyable. I really had a good time. They did an admirable job. No one could take your place, though.
Nice.
Brother Harold is not back in the Crystal Studios in Los Angeles, unfortunately. He is still traveling, so be praying for him and his family this week. They're in the Northeast, and they'll be there for about another 10 days or so from the time of our recording, and about another week from the time that you all hear this play on Saturday. And then they'll be traveling back across the continent in the Great White Van. So if you see the white van go by with hands and feet sticking out of it, wave. That's them. Pray for them as they travel, and pray that it makes it back to Los Angeles. Anyways, it's good to be back here with our regular routine on the Family Builders Podcast. Brother Harold, why don't you go ahead and give us our builder's tip this week?
All right. I knew I was up for the builder's tip, and so I asked the pastor that we're staying with right now. We just finished a revival at their church, and his name is Pastor Josh Lovelace. And I asked him, I said, I know you listen from time to time to our podcast, and you know we do a builder's tip. And so can I ask you to share a builder's tip with our listeners? And he says, oh, wow. And it took him about 5 seconds to go, okay, I know what I like to share. And he said this, and I really like it. He said this, here's the tip, be real with your kids. And so I said, okay, unpack that. If you can give me a don't do this, but do this. And he says, oh, that's easy. He said, don't do this. They come up to you and don't say this, quote, we can talk about that another time. Let me finish my episode, or let me finish my fill in the blank. He said, don't do that, but instead do this. Be real, as in be present. Listen to them. Listen to this. I thought this was awesome, listeners. Listen to them, not because you want to fix them, but listen to hear first and help second. He said, your kids need to know that you were a teenager once. You were 15 once. You were fill in the blank once. So you're not looking down upon them, but you understand what Psalm 119 verse 9 says. Wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way? The Bible says wherewithal. So he said, Pastor Moore, the reason it says it that way is because a young man it's already implied that they're going to be dirty from time to time. And so our teenagers, our young people, our children come to us, and we need to be real. We need to be present and ready to communicate to them that you've been where they were. And so I thought that was pretty awesome, Brother Moore. Be real with your kids.
Yeah, that is really good. And that actually goes along with one of the questions and answers that was shared last week with the Harold kids, as they asked about lessons I have learned. And I pointed out that I had learned the lesson of listening to my wife without trying to fix the problem. and used the famous video online of the nail in the forehead. And did you and your kids watch that, by the way?
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah.
Not hilarious, hilarious. It's kind of like, is it a hilarious?
Oh no, it's hilarious. Yeah, for certain people,
Yeah.
not for others. But anyways, yeah. But that's a great builder's tip. I appreciate that, and thank you to your host pastor there. Well, listeners, I do want to remind you about our sponsor. Midwest Christian Academy is a full service homeschool organization. They provide everything from diagnostic testing to identify learning gaps your student might have, all the way through high school academic projections, transcripts, and upon completion of schoolwork, a fully accredited high school diploma. That accreditation is essential when it comes to after high school, whether it's joining the military or getting a job or going to college. That accredited high school diploma is really important. So look at MidwestChristianAcademy.com to see what they can do to help you on your homeschool journey, whether you're just starting off homeschooling kindergartner, first grade, or you've got high schoolers, or maybe you yourself need to go back and finish up your high school diploma. Midwest Christian Academy can help you. Use the code BUILDERS in the referral line, get a 50% discount on the first year's registration fee. Do good by your students and give them a Christian education. Do great by your students and enroll them in Midwest Christian Academy. All right, Brother Harold, I want to talk about something a little different this week.
All right, let's hear it.
I already gave you a hint. Did you catch it?
I did, kind of. No, I didn't.
It's a little different. I want to talk about change.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Don't tell me this is a beginning of a 40-week series.
Well, that would not be a change, would it?
Well, folks, it's been good to be with you today. That's
yeah. Thanks for checking in.
change.
Yeah, change. And I'm not talking about, quarters, nickels, and dimes in your pocket, which, by the way, can I just say, American currency is maybe the best currency.
Okay.
Because we use bills, paper bills, for dollars, $5, $10, and so forth. We were in Canada one time, and in Canada, they use coins for everything up to, and I want to say they had like a $1 Canadian. They call it a loon, by the way. Hello. Your money is loony, Canada. They had a $2 coin, and I want to say they had a $5 coin. I could be wrong on that, but it was all coins. If you're listening from Canada, I apologize. I'm just complaining. Okay. I don't really have anything against you, but I had a pocket full. So, we went to dinner and we paid, with Canadian currency. We'd gone to this place and bought some things with some souvenirs with Canadian currency. So I had this pocket full of change, and it was actually like $12, $13, $14 in change because of the $1, $2, and multiple dollar coins. And so we're walking through old Montreal, which is kind of this touristy area, and it's old. It's it's kind of historical, and there's street performers everywhere doing stuff. And there was this guy, and he was playing classical guitar, and I like classical guitar. So we stopped and listened, and of course, he had his guitar case out. People were putting money in, and so just on impulse, I reached to my pocket and pulled out some change. And I thought I'd probably dropped in 50, 75 cents, something like that. We walk away and my son says, "Dad, how much did you put in?" And all of a sudden it occurs to me, those weren't quarters.
Yeah.
I gave this guy like $12. It was probably the greatest night of his performance life. But anyway, so we're not talking about that kind of change today. Okay.
These rich Americans.
Oh man. Well, boy, did you nail me, right? Yeah. Rich American. 50% correct there. I'm an American. So there you go. Anyways, that's not the kind of change we're talking about. Brother Harold, are you the same person that you were on the day, your anniversary was July 4th? Is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
July 4th. What year did you get married?
2000.
Okay, so Independence Day, 2000 versus August Today is August 14th. August 14th, 2025. Quarter of a century later. Are you the same person?
Unrecognizably, completely different.
Yeah, of course you are. In fact, probably by July 4th, 2001, you were probably a different person.
Right. Right.
Right? I mean, people change. There's an old saying, women get married expecting their husband to change, but he never does. Husbands get married expecting their wives never to change, but they do. There's a little bit of truth to that, in that sometimes women get married expecting their husband to change as they see him becoming idealized. And there's men maybe get married expecting their wife to stay the same as the beautiful young woman, with no realization of what time can do to people. But what we don't understand sometimes is that change can be good and change can be bad, but change is determined in large part by character. And that's what I want to get down to this afternoon as we record this episode. Our character ought not to change, regardless of my appearance. Now, when I got married, I had a thick mustache of brownish red facial hair. I had pretty good head of brownish red hair on top of my head, and I was in pretty decent shape. I mean, I had been in college. I worked on the wood crew. I cut down trees and hauled logs and stuff, and so I was pretty decent shape. And over the years, things changed. Now I have a full beard and head of white hair. My wife and I were riding in the car with our oldest granddaughter this summer, and she wanted to play I Spy. Couldn't think of the name of the game. She wanted to play I Spy, and her first guess was I spy something white. And we were trying to figure it out. We're looking throughout the whole car, is it this thing? Is it that thing? And finally she said, Grandpa, it's your hair. That hurt.
Wow.
In my head, I'm still a young man with brownish red hair. But I've changed. My appearance has changed. My knowledge has changed. I don't think my character has changed very much, but where it has changed, I pray it has changed for the better. So let's talk a little bit about what makes people change and how they change and how to change properly. And I think a biblical perspective on that, Brother Harold, is certainly in order. As we go to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. As a Christian, my life belongs to the Lord.
Right.
And so where I'm at in my life needs to be usable for the Lord from the perspective of my age and my circumstances. And so when I was 25, a young married man just entering into the ministry, to now at 58, an old married man with grandkids and married children that are adults and
white hair.
Very white hair. Thank you. Yes. You can only say that, by the way, because you shave your head.
And I only shave my head because most of my head doesn't grow hair.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What you have with us listeners is the difference between a bowling ball and a snow globe.
It's about right.
Yeah. So that's why we're only audio, not video. You're welcome, listeners, by the way. All right. So Brother Harold, let's talk about that's a change co-host. You keep insulting me. No, let's talk about change of character. Have you dealt with people in the ministry that their character has changed? You've watched it change?
Well, I know that mine has, going back to 2000. when I got married, my character changed for the worse initially for a while, specifically with the thought of marriage, being a husband. And then, praise the Lord, conviction, different things set in, mostly conviction. And I began to change back to what I left, kind of went prodigal
Right.
without ever leaving the home.
Sure.
And so I myself have experienced that. But sadly, I've experienced those character changes in others. And I have some people specifically in my mind over the last 20 some odd years
Hmm.
that haven't returned. And so I have seen that completely, that individual that wanted to chase that fill in the blank thing that really never satisfied, but then for different reasons never came back home. And so I have
Right.
sadly seen that.
So
And
let's open that up a little bit. In my experience, unfortunately, sometimes it's not a character change. Sometimes it's a character revelation where the outward was one way, but the inward was entirely it was a show. It was pretend. That can only be maintained for a certain amount of time, right? I mean, at some point, the outward becomes what the inward is, right? Character is almost always revealed at some point. Would you agree with that?
yeah, but I do believe personally, I believe it can change.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm just
Oh, okay.
pointing out that there are some instances, and that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking
Got you.
about a fraudulent presentation being revealed. We're talking
Okay.
about genuine character change. So we're
Yeah.
talking about a person who, at one point, and let's just put it within. Well, let's keep it within the family perspective because I mean it's easy to show it in churches. You see it all the time in churches, unfortunately. But in the family perspective, you see a man pledge his love and faithfulness to a wife, and he fully intended to keep that pledge, but because of different factors, whether it's dissatisfaction on his part, whether it's perceived change of his spouse, whether it is just a boredom with life as it is, whatever the situation might be, that one time fully intentional commitment to faithfulness changes and a husband becomes unfaithful, or vice versa, a wife becomes unfaithful. So, what brings about this massive change of character? Because, Brother Harold, I've sadly had to counsel couples over the decades of ministry that have said, I mean, I've never had anybody sit down across from me and say, hey, I did exactly what I intended to do. I intended to go this far in sin, and then I stopped, and now I'm ready to repent. It is uniformly 100% of the time. I never intended to do this. I never imagined I would be able to do this, and I can't believe what I've done.
Right.
And my response is, well, you've been present the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you made, given the full benefit of the doubt, you had no intention of doing it. But my dad used to have a saying that I really didn't like because he always brought it up whenever I did something wrong. And I would say, well, I didn't mean to. And my kids, their skin is going to crawl when they hear me say this because I've said it to them like my dad said it to me. It is not enough not to mean to. You have to mean not to.
Hmm.
I'm going to say it again, listeners, because you want to write this one down. It is never enough not to mean to. You have to mean not to. That is, Brother Harold, I think that might be the very perfect definition of character. If you mean not to sin, that's a big difference from not meaning to sin, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The not meaning to sin, that's passive. Well, I'm just, I'm walking along and everything's fine. And whoa, sin hit me right in the head. No, that sin was there all the time. You just weren't paying attention.
Right.
But I mean not to. I'm walking along and I say, hey, I see temptation up ahead. I'm going to go this way. In the book of Proverbs, the writer of Proverbs puts it like this: enter not into the path of the wicked, go not in the way of evil men, avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. 4 different definitions or descriptions of avoiding temptation. That's meaning not to.
Yeah.
So the change in character that happens in people that affects families, I think, Brother Harold, probably we could even say maybe, and I don't think this is a statistic as much as an observation. I would say better than 60% of the time, that change of character comes about because of a lack of intentional living.
Yeah, I'm the word nerd, and there's a bunch of different
Oh,
definitions
yes,
of
you are.
character. There's a bunch of different definitions of character, but I want to hone in on one portion of it because it's right what you're saying. It means the peculiar qualities impressed by nature or, and here it is, or habit on a person. When you gave your wedding vows, you said to thee and thee only, or however you said it, but you were all in, and that was your desired habit. But once you decided, and I'm going to go just use an example, once you decided in your marriage, now you're married, you're living life, and you decided we're no longer going to be faithful to Sunday night service or midweek service, or
Mm-hmm.
you began to break the habits that you had. Well, if you will, dominoes began to fall. And then you look up one day and you really go, how did we get here? Well, it didn't start there. It
Right.
started with breaking the habit for me before 2000, before July 4th, 2000. The habits I already had in place, which attracted Sherry to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had habits in place. So then after marriage, we're just not going to do Sunday school anymore. Well, that should be for the believer out of character.
Right.
That should be out of habit. But because of that, well, maybe Sunday night doesn't look as attractive. And Wednesday night doesn't look as attractive. And family devotions don't look as attractive. And so we have to live intentionally. And that's really where we have safeguards in place to break the bad habits that we never want to make in the first place.
Right. Now, and that is a great transition, if you will, into the next aspect of change, which is sometimes change is not so much a personality change or even a spiritual change as it is a circumstantial change. People respond differently to different circumstances. My wife and I have gone through kind of the gamut of married life. We've had our pre-marriage days, our newlywed days, our childbearing years, our child raising years, our teenage years, which is why I have white hair. Just saying. Into our sending them off years, and now our empty nest years, and even our, they call them golden years because that's how much it costs to live, is you have to have actual gold. But,
Wow.
yeah. Our grandparent years, which, by the way, numbers 8 and 9 are on the way.
Woohoo!
Next year is going to be a big year for the Moores. All right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's exciting. But so now I will say circumstantially, there's a big difference between newlywed years and empty nest years. There's a lot of the same kind of characteristics. Newlywed years, it's just me and my wife. Empty nest years, it's just me and my wife. Newlywed years, our grocery bill was X number of dollars, and then we had all these kids that ate like wolves, and now we're empty nest years, and our grocery bill is back down to a reasonable amount of money.
Right.
Circumstantially, there's some similarities, but boy, is it different now, having spent the last 28 years or more. I'm trying to think how long I think we've been married about 2 years when our first child was born, and now we're about halfway through our 36th year. So however many years that is, I can't do the math that fast, but see, things change. But however many years that is, circumstantially, there's differences, even though there's similarities. You follow, you track what I'm saying here.
Right, right.
So circumstantially, there are changes in us. I mean, back when we were newlyweds, it was so funny. My wife grew up in a small town around, farming country. Her family a lot of them were farmers growing up, even though her dad was not a farmer. But they still, they rose early and they went to bed early. Her dad was if you're not up at 6 a.m., you're lazy. Of course, he'd get up at 4 just to prove he was not lazy. And then he would take a 3-hour nap in the middle of the day, but whatever. But, but then by 9 o'clock at night, they're done. They're in bed. I worked nights when we got married. It was nothing for me to stay up all night long. And so many times I would get off work and it would be my weekend. And my wife was like, well, it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to bed. And I'm going, what are you doing? I'm up. I'm off. Let's watch a movie. Let's go out to eat. Let's do something. She's like, it's the middle of the night. Here we are all these years later. And she's still pretty much 9 o'clock. She's done. But now by 9 o'clock, I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking, how am I going to stay awake for another hour just so I don't feel like I'm 1,000 going to bed at 9 o'clock? I have changed, brother. I tell you, I have changed circumstantially. Things have happened in my life that have just worn me out, have tired me. It used to be when I finally went to bed, I could sleep for 9 hours straight. Now I'm lucky if I get 6.5, 7 hours at a time. I wake up. I'm not able to sleep. Just different circumstances. So those kind of changes, Brother Harold, can affect the rest of my life if I'm not still living intentionally, if I'm not still exercising my character. And by the way, character should be looked at as a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
If you don't exercise it and develop it, it weakens, it atrophies, it changes. Now, I'm in a different season of life from what I was in my newlywed days. Even though some circumstances are the same, other circumstances have been different. And so God ought to be able to use me. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. God's purpose for me now in this time of my life is different than it was in my days as a newlywed. And so my character has to remain the same, even though the circumstances have changed.
It's true. I'm envisioning a couple days ago, my family and I went to a lighthouse here on the East Coast. And I've learned here that you have the shoreline and then you have the beachfront. And the difference is the beachfront has sand. The shoreline is rocky. So the rocky shoreline is a little bit harder, a little more dangerous to walk out on as the water is hitting against the rocks. Well, we went down as far as we could, took some pictures. But what I noticed, Brother Moore, is I'm going to make a number just to paint a picture. There's 50 people that aren't with us. And out of these 50 people, 40 of them were senior citizens. They weren't venturing out on the rocks because they were in a different season. And I sat there thinking, again, I just always have family on the heart and mind. Mm-hmm. I thought, I wonder how many of them would love to have the ability that I have to go out on the rocks with my little kids, with, Alden out there. And to be honest, I'm walking circumspectly thinking if I have to go in, if somebody gets sucked in, the water's coming. But the reality is they were in a different season. I'm in the season of I'm willing to go, but I'm really only going because my kids are here. And then Alden, my 5-year-old, he's in a season of I just want to get in that water. He doesn't even understand the dangers.
And let's be honest, if you had to go in, it was going to be Alden.
Or Angel, still.
Really? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a story I'll tell you later. But
okay, yeah.
So really, though, the character was being developed in Alden,
right,
being developed in Angel, still being developed but understood by me. and the senior saints who were all the way back where the grass was, fully, if you will, if you can be fully developed, but
Right.
understanding the dangers of every aspect of it. And so we're painting a picture with this change. Our bodies change, different circumstances change, different roles and responsibilities, but character really stood strong all the way through.
Yeah. And that's kind of our whole premise for this podcast. We're family builders. The building, it implies there's going to be change. I mean, you take 2x4s and drywall and concrete, and it's all piled up at a building site. But over a period of weeks and months, it becomes a slab and a foundation and a frame and walls and a roof and siding and carpet and paint and so forth. And so it changes from the materials to the finished product. When you have a couple that gets married and then they have children, you've got materials, but the finished product is you've built a family. You've built productive people. You've built people that are productive in society, people that are productive in their social circles, but most importantly, people that are productive for the cause of Christ. These are good changes. But if you don't make the good changes on purpose, there's going to be other changes that aren't as good. It's not enough not to mean to. I didn't mean to develop a sociopath and serial killer. But did you mean not to? That's why we build our families. That's why we want to make sure there's good change. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. I want to thank our listeners for joining us for our discussion. I hope and I pray that the Family Builders podcast has helped you and your family as you change for the better to be more like Christ. Brother Harold, if you don't have anything else for us this week, why don't you go ahead and take us out?
Sure. Thank you for listening to the Family Builders podcast. Please subscribe and share this week's podcast with your friends and family. Also, if you have any questions for either of us, please do not hesitate to email us at familybuilderspodcast@gmail.com. Who knows? Maybe we'll even answer your question on one of our future episodes. Until next time, Family Builders, never let up.